Welcome to Noel's Good Friend Show. I'm your host, Noel. It's a show where I invite my friends to talk about friendship, how to meet new people, and how to be a good friend. This is my first episode, and I'm really excited about it. And I couldn't think of a better first guest. She's one of my friends that I've known the longest. She's a talented playwright, a marketing leader, and she's been my best friend for 12 years. Please welcome Mareya. Hello.
Hi,
Welcome to the
guys.
show. Today's episode is called What's a Good Friend? So, let's start things off with a little bit about you and I's friendship. In your words, how did we meet? And what was your first impression of me?
I mean, hey, it goes back to high school. I always label you as my high school bestie. And honestly, first impression was so funny and just so true to who you really are, to be honest. I remember, I think our very first encounter was I went with a friend to Asian Student Union meeting. I went there and you kind of walked up to me and you were like, "Are you Filipino?" And I was like, "No."
I was like trying to rationalize.
Yeah, you're like, "Why am I this girl here?"
I was like, you were welcome to be there, but it was like me trying to
Right.
find the tie, you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Which, we talk about all the time. Like our school was so progressive and so,
Yeah.
all that fun stuff. But no, honestly, like it was one of those things that like when you said that, it kind of made me feel like I wasn't a weirdo for being
Mhm.
there. But yeah, definitely my first impression. And I feel like from there we just kept having these like moments, where we were crossing paths, and then theater obviously is where we really like truly blossomed as friends.
It's funny, like that one, you actually always jog my memory about that first time meeting. My first memory of us, there's like these benches outside of the school.
Yeah.
And then we were kind of just like sitting. We were both on the benches, but we weren't speaking. And then somebody who we also did theater with like sat between us and they kind of introduced us to each other. And I was like,
Yes.
hey,
Yes.
What was your experience like making friends growing up? Like before you and I even met? And if you could talk me through the stages.
Yeah, so I was definitely a lot more shy growing up. For example, like most of the time I'd be playing by myself independently and like somebody would come up and they'd be like, "Hey, I see you're, playing by yourself. Do you want to play with me?" And that was the blueprint of how I made friends a lot of the time. Which in hindsight was complex because I wasn't necessarily doing the one choosing. And so sometimes I was, waiting for people to come to me. And then because I wanted them to stay my friend, I sometimes would endure a lot. I had a friend who crazy, like set me up for like stealing. But like I again was this shy kid who like didn't really do anything. There was this instance where she like stole somebody's like pencil bag and put it in my backpack. And like, so when the girl was like looking for her pencil bag and like everyone was like, "Oh, we don't know where this is," that friend of mine like opened my backpack and was like, "I found it. It's in Mareya's bag." Yeah. She
Oh
was
my God, a
diabolical.
setup, a setup.
Yeah. So that was a little tough. And then I moved. I moved up to Maryland where I ended up staying for the rest of my schooling. I was going into a school where everybody had their own friendships and stuff. So again, I was kind of an outsider. And that was really a struggle in middle school because not to get a little dark here, but my dad did pass away when I was in sixth grade, which kids don't know how to deal with grief. So they were not the nicest. They were not the most empathetic. They didn't understand that I was crying because I was grieving, not I was
Yeah.
crying because I got to be on my test. But to them, it looked like I was crying because I got to be on my test.
Yeah, they
Um,
couldn't conceive of this idea of like your grief about something is gonna manifest in something else.
exactly.
You know?
Right. Exactly. Whereas, like, obviously, I'm looking at that in hindsight, like, duh. But I got very bullied for being the sensitive kid. And the kid who was always crying at something like very like little, but it wasn't really that fun. I had a rocky start.
Well, this becomes like a recurring theme in you and I's life. Is like we're kind of enduring a lot of similar things, but in like completely different like places.
Yeah.
Because for me, I grew up in the Philippines, and I'm gay, and I was very obviously kind of like effeminate. I think whether that's neighborhood kids or kids in the school, like they would entertain it as much as like kids want to play. But there's at some point, it would come up, and I would get bullied for being gay. I struggled making friends, and that kind of culminated in, up until like right before I left the Philippines. So basically, it was all the dawn of like early internet and early social media. So there was this program called Friendster. I don't know if it ever took off here in America, but it was really big in Asia.
Okay, I think I've heard of it, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but
Yeah.
it was pre-Facebook. We had our whatever accounts, and you could create forums and message boards on there. And then one day, a bunch of kids from my classes created a message board that the name of it was like a gay slur. It kind of like made me nervous because I was like, oh, like, I don't know what's going on there. It's probably not for me. But people would reference that gay slur in class. And it was kind of sad because I would sometimes laugh along, even though I didn't get the joke, because I was
Yeah.
just like trying to kind of get along with people. And then one day my curiosity finally like got the best of me. And then I looked at it, and it was an entire message board that was like dedicated to like talking like crap about me. It was like how I was gay and I was annoying and all these things. And it was like a really, really tough time, especially because it was around the time my dad left for America, and I like
Mm.
didn't really hear from him so much. And then my mom left. It was like my immigration story was a bit disjointed. I was also going through a really tough time, and people weren't very generous about it.
Mm.
Fast forward, I moved to America, and then I go to middle school in a school in California. And then, I ended up meeting a lot of people, and people were really kind to me. And, with as much like kind of cruelty as like the kids in elementary had, it was like a complete opposite by the time I went to middle school. What I found really interesting is that, and I think about this all the time, is it didn't change much between elementary school and middle school.
Mhm.
And I think there's something about that I think speaks to friendship beyond myself, and that sometimes it's a matter of environment. It's about finding the people and the places where the people that could understand you, that could relate to you,
Yeah.
and where they would be. For a really long time before I moved, to the States, I thought that there was something wrong with me, that I was like incapable of forming like friendships for some reason, deep down. But no, I think it was just such a matter of like environment. Do you think it's harder to make friends now than it was when we were younger?
In some ways, yes, but in some ways, no. I mean, to be honest, I do think friendships are very dynamic, and the
Mhm.
making of friendships is something that is a skill that you can master, but you're never going to be perfect at,
Mhm. Mhm.
No matter if you're 5 years old, 50 years old,
Mhm.
80 years old, I'm
Mhm.
sure that it's just as hard. It's very
Yeah.
vulnerable.
Mhm.
And I think the older you get, the more you actually start to understand that it's not just walking up to somebody and being like, "Hi, I like your shoes.
Mhm.
Okay, now we're best friends." Um, so, I think that because of my own experiences, I would say sometimes, being older is a little bit, it makes it easier to make friends because I'm able to kind of siphon out the bad seeds from
Mhm.
observation very early on.
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, I do kind of miss that simplicity of being a kid and just, circumstantially, you're in the same neighborhood, you're playing outside, all of a sudden, you're spending every afternoon with them, and you obviously are organically going to become friends.
What you're getting on here is that I think when you're younger, there's a lot of proximity, right? You go to schools, go to the same, live in the same neighborhood, and there's a lot more opportunity for the spontaneity to happen. It's easier to meet friends, but the difficulty of childhood is it's harder to keep friends, right? Because you have so little control over, like, like you said, you move, you know what I mean? And then, like, in many ways, you also kind of don't really quite know yourself, and neither does anybody else. Like, compatibility is hard to navigate in. But, when you get older, though, um, intentionality becomes more important. But I think that makes it easier to keep friends. Although it's harder to meet friends as an adult because we live such isolated or disconnected lives, it could be easier to keep friends because you're so much more intentional, and you know yourself and they know themselves. And that, I think there's greater opportunity for a deeper kind of friendship. So we're going to take a quick break, but please stick around. There will be more Noel's Good Friend Show. We're back here on Noel's Good Friend Show. I'm here with my best friend, Mareya. So it's our very first season, and the tagline is Friends First. So I thought it would be interesting if we start with the basics. If you could sum up in one word what makes for a good friend, what would it be?
Connection.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Elaborate. Elaborate.
Okay. So I say connection because whenever I think of somebody who's a great friend, I think of somebody who I'm not afraid to connect with. I'm not afraid to, have those moments of honesty and, vulnerability and just like camaraderie too. I feel like a good friend is somebody who supports you in your decisions, even if they don't agree. But I think that's like the biggest thing for me is just feeling like I'm able to, have this bond with somebody. And then to another effect of that connection too is I think having commonalities with people really sets a solid foundation. I mean, you're not going to be friends with somebody that you have nothing in common with.
Well,
And I think, well,
sometimes,
yes, you can, but
sometimes
are they
you,
gonna be friends?
right.
Um, so yeah, I feel like yeah, my barometer is all about how much connection I can have with somebody, and the more the better. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's something I value.
For me, my word would be safety, and it's probably, it's adjacent to your word because I think, you know, feeling safe to be yourself, and feeling like you won't be judged and whatnot. And exactly for what you said, like, even if they don't agree, so much of that is about like love and acceptance, a respect for each other's agency and unique path in life. Do you think the qualities of a good friend change depending on the person or stage of life?
I think it's both. Because I think that like they can change depending on the person because I do think like, how I relate to one person versus another one can be different. And those qualities of that friendship are different based on those different people. But I also think that stages of life also make a difference because we change as we go through stages of life. So the friend that I was at 15 could be very different than the friend I am at 29, like me and you, right? For example. And I just think it's important to put this out there is that like we had this bond when we were 15, 16, and then we didn't for a little bit of time. And we reference that all the time, but I think that what's crazy is now we're back. And so to me, that almost does lend itself to it's the person, right? Because, maybe those stages of life we didn't fit with each other at all of them. But we've also fit with each other at two different stages at this point. So again, that's why I just feel like it's a little bit of both. Um,
Yeah, I agree. For me, it's like, um, they have to change because our needs change throughout life, right? Like the kind of needs that we had when we were in high school is going to be different when we were in college, different in like early, mid, late 20s. You know what I mean? There was a period in time after we graduated high school where Mareya moves back to Florida for college, and then we kind of like lose touch for a little bit. We dub these the lost years. Then we reconnected a little into the pandemic. Funny enough, you were a guest on a
mhm,
Instagram live show that I did, which is kind of like a little bit of a precursor to this,
I know.
Um, and yeah, like you were a guest on the show, and then we started connecting again. What are other qualities or values that you seek in a friend?
Silliness is probably one of my big ones. And I think you can tell when you start to look at all of the friends that I'm the closest with. Humor is such a big value of mine, specifically in friends.
Kind of mad right now because you stole my answer. That was literally what I was gonna say. Come to think of it now, maybe that's kind of why we need each other in this particular stage in life because
Yeah.
right when we were teachers, it was just pure silliness. We did
Yeah.
theater, obviously all that fun, and then we went through the stages of adulthood, and like going into it, it was like this is getting it's a little serious,
Oh,
and I
I'm too
think
serious. Especially
and
the pandemic. Actually, you kind of
mm,
picking up on something
mm,
too. Like we were really in desperate need. So
yeah,
like,
but like yeah, companionship. Maybe that's what we bring to one another. Among other things, it's like
yeah.
this sense of levity. It just connects me to a period in my life that was so like light-hearted and just so
Mhm.
fun. And I need that, to juxtapose the kind of seriousness of the life that we have to live as adults.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
mm. Can you think of a moment when a friend really showed up for you?
I'd say this was a group effort, actually. I don't think I can really pinpoint one specific friend. But a few years ago, my mom was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. And after already losing a parent, the thought of losing a second one was like earth shattering to me. And I think that I just completely broke. And I kind of went into this mode of, I need people to show up for me. I've shown up for people so many moments in my life. I need people to show up, whether that's, just sitting with me, whether that's having a fun little phone call, whether or not that's, kind of discussing like the logistics even. I had a friend who her mom had gone through something similar. So we were able to kind of talk through the logistics. And I think that, again, that's why I say it's a group effort. I don't think there was a singular person during that moment who did better than the other. But that was when I needed the friends the most, is when I was the most vulnerable, kind of like I couldn't even really function almost. And I think that's what true friends really are there for. But I think what's great when you get older and have different types of friends, they can show up in different ways, and it's just as valuable as another person. So again, that person who's making me laugh is just as valuable as that person who's letting me cry. And I don't know. I think that was just so valuable to me. And I really held on to that feeling a lot. It's like that's that connection that I was talking about, that support, and just being able to have somebody else pick up some of my pieces for me.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful that you were able to talk about like the breadth of support that everybody has something unique to. Every good friend has something unique to offer in supporting you through a difficult time. Like you said, I've had that moment too, where like I don't always need to like emote about something. I actually need somebody to come in and talk about like any other thing else than like the thing that I'm dealing with. You know what I mean? That's it. For me, a moment when a friend really showed up to me, I'm going to talk about you actually. And that is, it's also the way that people show up for you when you're not around and when you don't even know. You had told me, just a couple of years ago, and it gags me every time I think about it, is this canonical experience that gay men have where like somebody walks up to them that's like, I have to ask you a question, but you have to promise me you won't get me. And like that never happened to me at Long Beach, not one. And then for the longest, I was just kind of like, oh, that's kind of odd. And then it was until like years later that you told me that you had been fielding all those questions. Like all the times anybody ever wanted to ask you about being gay, you had like received that question, and then you would tell them like, that's not really our business. That's not right. And what's crazy is when I visited you in Orlando and we met up with Karen, which is another friend of ours in high school, and you guys both kind of connected about the fact that she was also fielding those questions. And so I think that was so beautiful, like true friendship, right? Like the way that like they show up for you in ways that you don't even know, like that again. And that's why to me that is the value and the quality of safety that I felt throughout that experience in high school. So yeah, you really, really showed up for me in many ways, beyond my own realizations. Thank you.
Well, it was, honestly, I didn't even think twice about it. And I think that's what's so funny is like, even when you bring it up, right? I'm like, oh, I was just, I don't know. That's what I would do for anybody. And I guess it's like hard for me to even like accept I was doing a good thing, because I was just like, I mean, it's not our business. Why are we talking about this?
Yeah.
In many ways, maybe I could have been a great publicist in
I was saying like, you were my publicist. You were like, like the Noel camp will not comment. The Noel camp will not comment. With that, we're going to take another quick break, but we'll be back with more Mareya on Noel's Good Friends. Welcome back. I'm here on Noel's Good Friends show. I'm here with my best friend, Mareya. What do you think gets in the way of people being good friends these days?
Insecurities, for sure. I think that as you grow up and as you navigate adulthood, people don't love to talk about insecurity because it's viewed as like weakness, and nobody wants to be labeled insecure. But we all are. And I think that's okay to acknowledge. But I think that gets in the way a lot because, insecurities lends yourself a lot to overthinking and also villainizing. There's so many different elements, I would say, to how much bad insecurity can lend on relationships in general, but mostly friendships. And I think that that's something we have to be careful of is, when sometimes you're in an insecure moment or you're in an overthinking stage, not really projecting that onto another person. So you think there's a go-to, like, oh, well, I'm feeling bad about myself. I should be upset because this person didn't show up for me, blah, 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 like whatever the reason is. And then also it kind of causes you to start again, like filling in the gap where you shouldn't. So I mean, I would chalk it all the way up to that. But I think there's many different things that can also go wrong. Miscommunication too. But
Right. I mean, I think that also kind of relates to, kind of dialing back to the idea of like the landscape of friendship changing and how like technology plays into that. Like I think, we see so much of the facade of people's life, right? Like the parts of their life that they want to share
right.
On like the internet, for example. And it's very easy for us to kind of take what little information that is and to compare ourselves to. There's a quote that says, comparison is the thief of joy.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think social media lends itself so much to comparison and yeah, and again, because you've internalized this kind of belief about somebody, you start then like acting in relation to them, like kind of overcompensating. It becomes this whole kind of cycle. What are some things you've learned about yourself through your friendships?
Oh my gosh. My loyalty, actually. I think that all of the friends that I've had, good and bad, have really shown me how loyal I can be. If I choose you as a friend, in my mind, that's a like lifelong commitment. I'm not going into a friendship thinking, yeah, in a couple of years I'm gonna
Yeah.
move them.
Yeah, you got 2 years left.
Yeah, like, oh,
Your
I'm
contract's ending. We will see if we're gonna resign.
right. So yeah, I think that, just throughout as I've gotten older and really reflected on all these different friendships that I've had and really see like how truly loyal I can be. I mean, obviously I know when something needs to end. I'm not gonna be loyal just for the sake of being loyal. And that's something that is a harder skill for me because I think I'm so loyal.
Yeah.
That as I've, navigated again through those bad friendships, I noticed that, you shouldn't be loyal to everybody. But with that being said, I still think that it's such a big part of me as a friend. Um, because I think that I love when I love hard. And, I'm gonna stand up for you. I'm gonna, defend you and really just want you to be in my life for as long as humanly possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, something I've learned in my friendship, I think about like, to what authority do I have to make this show and talk about friendships? And what I had to learn almost kind of like in the reverse is like, for a really long time, I thought, oh God, I suck. But my friends are so nice putting up with me. And like, like they're just so generous. And there was this moment that I realized, oh no, I have good friends because I am a good friend. Yeah.
Right.
It's like that's that's what I learned. It's like, like good people don't stick around with nasty spirits. You know what I mean? But no, I think yeah, I learned my capacity for like love and compassion and like goodness. Like it is through, the mirror that they create for me to see myself, that I realize, oh, like I'm deeply capable. You know what I mean? Why do friendships matter now?
Honestly, I feel like the state of the world is a little tough right now. And when I say that, I mean like life as a young 20s individual, young 20s, early 30s, the pre-stages of like adulthood, it's tough. It's lonely. It's not really easy.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes it can be sad and it can really, get to you. And then I think there's that, glimmer of hope when you have relationships.
Yeah.
I think we are humans who are striving for connection. We are a species that want to connect. And and we're not creatures that actually can survive alone.
Yeah.
We need each other. So, there's such a deep need for it. And I think that now is the best time to have the best friends.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's like shifting, like the needs for connection remain, right? That is, our human mammalian necessity, right? But I think the way we've conceived of what that means historically, or at least in the most recent history, is the concept of like the nuclear family. This is what I think of, right? Like, you know, right now in history, it feels like your only two choices are you get married, have a kid, and all these things, or you die alone.
Yeah.
It's like, in my, if I'm just positing, like, there's got to be another way, right? Like, there's got, you know what I mean? And so, how do we form communities, and how do we create families with, other people? Whether that is you go in the direction of creating a nuclear family or not, like, you still are going to need that connection. I think people who are in nuclear families struggle right now because they don't always have the support of their family or a greater kind of village of people looking out for their families. And so I think it matters right now, like you said, because we need it.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
No, but no, in true reality, what made you want to make this show? Like, what's it all about for you?
I was inspired to make the show because, of some sentiments that I've noticed in the world, especially on like social media. Like, I would see these tweets where people would be like, I really wish I had a good group of friends and stuff like that. And it would like thousands upon thousands of likes. I started kind of thinking like this many people can't be wanting this thing and somehow not finding each other, right? My running theory is that since the pandemic got so isolated and there was like a whole period of time where people like didn't really connect one on one, maybe we've forgotten how to be friends. And it's not like there's any classes or school around how to form friendships. I've learned so much, and all the love that my friends have shown me, I felt like it would be honestly kind of like gatekeeping if I didn't share that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so, yeah, I mean, some of the things I share may work for others, some may not, but it's just me wanting to kind of contribute to some form of solution to this like loneliness epidemic, as people have
Yeah,
described it. My last question though, do you think there's such a thing as a friend soulmate?
I do. And it's the same lens that I have on regular soulmates is
Mhm.
that they're
Regular soulmates versus diet soulmate versus soulmate
versus
zero.
soulmate zero.
It's like zero sugar. They reformulate it. It tastes just the same as soulmate.
Not confused with soulmate light.
Yeah. There's also soulmate caffeine free. We got full range here.
We got it all. But no, I would say that just as I would view a romantic soulmate, I would say the same thing that I would say about, a friendship soulmate, which is that there's multiple. I don't necessarily believe that there's just one out there. And that's why I believe it exists. But I know that I have a friendship like one with you, where I'm so sorry, but even though you tried to end our subscription, it's null and void.
It renewed, honey. Sorry, it was
It's
automatic.
renewed.
I
Yeah.
I feel the same way. I think yeah, I believe in friend soulmates. You're one of mine, and I think yeah, because in many ways I don't feel like I'm trying that hard to be your friend. It is like, it's like gravity. It is in my nature to be your friend, and I'm getting a little bit emotional as I think about it. Being here, but I'm so grateful for you. So thank you for joining me today on this show. And I feel so lucky to have you in my life. And that I got to spend this first episode with you.
Yes, no, I'm so happy. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me as the premiere episode. Um, it's not going to my ego or anything.
Let the people know where they can find you if you want them to find you.
You can definitely find me on Instagram, Mareya Sunshine, all one word, and I'm on pretty much every other social media with the exact same username.
To you at home, I'm Noel, and this is Noel's Good Friend Show. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for being a good friend. Till next time.